Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 8. The Hairy Sea Monster. From the depths of the ocean, a terrifying thing was discovered washed up on a beach in the Philippine province of Oriental Mindoro in 2018. This thing was weird and creepy enough that it dominated international headlines. People started calling it the Globster because it looked like a glob monster. The beast that washed ashore was about the size of a truck and it smelled awful. It was also covered in pale slime. Most experts immediately declared it to be the corpse of a decomposing whale. But since there's no way to immediately tell, people started to speculate. One of the people present on the beach when the globster was discovered was Vox Cruzada, a local fishery law enforcement officer. Cruzada said the stench coming off the blubbery entity was so powerful that they almost puked. He claimed that he went home and took a bath, but the stench still stuck around in his nose. The animal didn't hang out on the beach for long. Curious folk took videos and pictures of it, but then the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources disposed of it. Although the blob looked extremely bizarre, it was almost definitely a species of whale, and it wasn't the first time a hairy white glob of gunk washed onto the beach and freaked everyone out. Something similar happened in the Dinagat Islands, which is also in the Philippines, in 2017. It was a 4,400-pound mass of stinking white nastiness, but later it was confirmed to be a whale carcass. National Geographic even posted a video of an identical sea monster that washed ashore in Indonesia. National Geographic said that theirs was a baleen whale. It was 49 feet long and looked like it was covered in wispy white hairs. And now for number 7. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Michael Odell and William Worthman. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. Number 7. The terrifying water bird. In northern Japan, 2 brothers were taking a leisurely stroll near a reservoir in their small town when one of the brothers noticed some unusual fragments sticking out of the ground. They kind of looked like bones to the brothers. So they collected as many pieces as they could carry and took the strange fragments to paleontologists at a nearby university. As it turned out, the brothers had discovered fossils of the oldest Japanese bird that's ever been identified. The remains belonged to an ancient bird with teeth, a creature that was an expert diver, and scientists didn't even know about it. It was an extremely unexpected discovery of a new and terrifying creature. The new species was named Chupcaornis caraorum, part of an extinct family of birds called Hesper ornithiformes. They were flightless, much like penguins or dodo birds, but they were also expert swimmers, diving deep into the waters of the Cretaceous Ocean to hunt for food. These frightening birds lived between 90 and 84 million years ago alongside dinosaurs, and the accidental fossil is now the best preserved specimen of a toothed water bird from Asia. It was also the first one found in the Far East. Anthony Fiorillo from the Perot Museum of Nature and Science in Dallas said there's never been a bird like it found in Japan before. It makes you wonder what other kinds of crazy creatures scientists still haven't found. The bird was about the size of a duck, but it was far more intimidating. It ate fish, which it captured on its dives using its pointy teeth. The bird had very powerful hind limbs designed for swimming, not walking, and researchers say it likely laid its eggs on land. But if it strayed too far from the safety of water, it became a dinosaur's dinner. Number 6. The safe in the river. George Tyndale is a teenage treasure hunter who searches the bottoms of rivers for forgotten heirlooms and strange relics of the past. He's found a lot of interesting stuff while scouring river bottoms with his dad, but his most recent discovery really takes the cake. George and his father were using a giant magnet to search for pieces of metal along the river with them in England when they captured a safe. So George pulled the rather heavy safe out of the muck and slime. It looked like a piece of garbage until they opened it up to find a pouch inside containing nearly $2,000. What would you do if you pulled a safe out of the river and it had $2,000 in it? Would you go on a shopping spree? Well, George didn't. George Tyndale decided he would give the money back. Thanks to a certificate and some expired bank cards inside the safe, George and his father were able to track down the owner, Rob Everett. Then, after they got in contact with Rob, George and his dad paid him a visit to return the stolen property. Rob's safe had been stolen some time ago, but the thieves dumped it in the river. The discovery of the safe turned into a surprisingly heartwarming story. Rob was so impressed with George's morals that he offered him a job at his business. George is still just a kid, but Rob said he can work for him once school is out at his wealth management company. Returning the wet and muddy money may have just gotten George a lifelong career. Number 5. The piano on the mountain. At the peak of Ben Nevis Mountain in Scotland, which has a height of 4,418 feet above sea level, a piano was discovered. 15 volunteers from a conservation charity were clearing garbage and repairing stone cairns when they came across this strange musical instrument. Trust director Nigel Hawkins said nobody could believe their eyes. At first they thought it was just the wooden casing, but then they saw the cast iron frame and the strings. It was an entire piano, a massive object at the top of the tallest mountain in the UK. The only thing missing from the piano was its keyboard. It's hard enough to climb to the top of a mountain with a backpack on, never mind carrying a piano that weighs the same as a small elephant. So how in the world did it get to the top of Ben Nevis? It's a mystery the volunteers were desperate to solve. The only clue came in the form of a biscuit wrapper found underneath the piano, with the date December 1986 printed on it. This suggests the piano was at the top of the mountain for almost 40 years. The volunteer group organizer Sandy Maxwell called it the biggest and heaviest object ever found on the mountain. Sandy also said it was the most unusual thing anyone's ever discovered on Ben Nevis. The volunteers broke the piano into pieces and carried it bit by bit off the mountaintop. Shortly after the bizarre discovery was made, the man behind the stunt came forward. His name was Kenny Campbell. He carried the piano to the summit of Ben Nevis on his back over 45 years ago in aid of charity. It took him 4 days to reach the peak of the mountain. Kenny also carried a beer barrel and a plow to the top of the mountain to raise money for charity. Number 4. The Fuk Kang meteorite. Almost 25 years ago, a hiker was taking a stroll near China's Fuk Kang Mountains when they stumbled upon something very unexpected. The hiker found what's now one of the most famous rocks in the world. It's called the Fuk Kang meteorite, and it might just hold the secrets of the universe. The Fuk Kang meteorite is made of stony iron and is packed with bizarre crystals in a honeycomb pattern. It's a kind of meteorite known as a palisite, characterized by nickel iron metal and crystals of olivine. When a palisite is polished, it shines a brilliant green, yellow, and gold. These types of meteorites were first described by German Dr. Peter Simon Pallas in 1772, which is how they gained their name. The first known example of a palisite, however, was found by a Siberian blacksmith. The Fuk Kang meteorite is an exceptional example of extraterrestrial material. This small chunk of rock is an important piece of our solar system's history. That's because it was forged about 4.5 billion years ago. Scientists believe the meteorite was created within superheated asteroids. Out of all the meteorites that have been found on this planet, palisites make up an estimated 0.2% of them. The hiker who discovered the Fuk Kang meteorite saw the rock a few times before their curiosity got the best of them. The hiker then broke off a specimen of the 2,221-pound space stone and sent it in for analysis. All these years later, that hiker likely wishes they'd kept the entire stone for themselves. In 2021, Christie sold a tiny chunk of the meteorite for a whopping $30,000. And in 2008, a much larger piece weighing 925 pounds was put up for auction in New York with an expected price tag of $2 million. The hiker could have kept it all for himself. But instead, others learned of the stone's existence after its material was analyzed. It was taken, chopped into pieces, and it's now been sold to the highest bidders. Number 3. Unexpected Viking treasure. When Mari Ingelen Heskestad of Western Norway purchased a bundle of cheap imitation jewelry and trinkets from an online auction, she didn't think there would be much of value in it. She bought the bundle, which was packaged into a banana box, because she was interested in some of the cheap bits of metal. None of the pieces were worth more than a couple bucks, but there were a few in there that Mari wanted to add to her collection. After she received the assortment in the mail, she noticed one of the pieces was a little unusual. It stood out to her because it was bright and gold, looking like it was made a very long time ago. It wasn't your average piece of fake brass jewelry. It was much heavier than the other pieces as well, and clearly stuck out from the plain earrings and copper Buddha trinkets. As it turned out, Mari accidentally purchased a Viking ring that was forged 1,000 years ago. Archaeologists believe the ring was likely worn on the finger of a powerful Viking chief. After Mari showed it to her family, she drove to her local government office and spoke with archaeologists on staff there. They analyzed the ring and confirmed that it was made sometime during the Scandinavian Iron Age. It would have been after 550 AD, but before 1000 AD. Nobody knows where the ring came from. Archaeologists suspect it was taken from the grave of a powerful Viking man. When the government officials reached out to the person who sold the ring online, he told them that he purchased it from an antique shop in Norway. It was his understanding that the ring came from either Sweden or Denmark. Researchers will likely never know whose grave it was pillaged from, just that it was an extremely valuable item. Only the most powerful Viking chiefs wore rings made from solid gold. Sadly, Mari didn't get to keep the unexpected treasure. It was handed over to the experts at the University Museum of Bergen, where eventually it will go on display. Number 2. The Lost Ship. Hundreds of yards from any coast, the hull of a rare ship was discovered in southeast England. The ship's hull was built in the 16th century and was found completely by surprise, buried inside a flooded quarry. It was a major discovery for Britain since very few vessels from the 16th century are still around. The ship was made during a time when England was rapidly expanding its trading links. It had gained control of the English Channel and was on its way to becoming the biggest naval force on the planet. The discovery was made in April 2023 when the flooded quarry was being dredged for gravel. The quarry is about 60 miles from London, 1,000 feet from the water. The workers at the quarry immediately contacted Historic England when they found it. Historic England then sent their archaeologists and even dipped into their emergency funding to recover the remains quickly. But how could the hull of a boat be so far from the water? The experts say it's because the landscape has changed a lot over the years. In the 1500s, the water may have been 1,000 feet closer to the shore. Archaeologists think the site of the quarry was on the coastline. The ship likely struck a rocky headland and was destroyed, and afterward it was left abandoned. But as the waters receded, the ship was slowly buried by mud and dirt. Then it became trapped underneath the quarry, almost lost for all of eternity. The vessel that the hull belonged to hasn't been identified. Researchers are working to analyze 100 timbers from the piece of the boat. They know, based solely on patterns of tree growth rings, that the wood was cut between 1558 and 1580. The ship was then made from English oak and was crafted from flush hull planks that were nailed onto a sturdy frame. Although historians do know a lot about the age in which the boat was built, there are little physical remains from that period. Heavier ships were being constructed for the first time, which allowed explorers to move across the Atlantic to the New World. This would have been one of the first modern ships capable of carrying pilgrims to unexplored lands. Number 1. Treasure under a parking lot. In downtown Montreal, the Hydro-Quebec's head office was built on an ancient part of the city. Over 200 years ago, somebody constructed a stone house on top of a solid foundation. And when workers began digging up the parking lot as part of a new project, they came across the bones of the old structure. The parking lot had been covering an archaeological treasure trove. Researchers are now trying to piece together the story of the residents who lived at the edge of an old stream here, long before Montreal was a modern international city. In the early 1800s, when the stone building was made, the neighborhood was already transitioning into an urban area. In the early part of the 18th century, Montreal was a workers' town. It developed outside the central fort's huge, imposing walls. The rich lived within the walls, while the artisans and farmers settled along the outskirts. But by the middle of the 18th century, the space inside the walls had become too dense with people, so Montreal began to spread outward, as it's still doing today. Archaeologists found artifacts from the 19th century buried beneath the parking lot. They also found a water well in pristine condition. It wasn't a completely unexpected find, though, because other similar pieces of history have been found during construction in the area. But still, nobody had expected such well-preserved remains of the original houses built near the end of the 1700s. Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. Number 10. Sutton Hoo. Since its discovery in 1939, Sutton Hoo is the most important physical link that we have to the Anglo-Saxon world. Located near the Suffolk coast, there is a stretch of land covered in mysterious mounds of earth surrounded by legend. When archaeologist Basil Brown and his team of excavators went to investigate the mounds, they expected that anything of value would have already been taken. However, together with Charles Phillips from the University of Cambridge, they kept digging and uncovered a buried ship left completely intact. Grave robbers had narrowly missed it, but that wasn't even the best part. Within this ship's cargo chamber was an enormous amount of treasure. This was the largest Anglo-Saxon ship burial ever discovered. It included objects from the Byzantine Empire and the Mid-East, including weapons, silver cutlery, gold buckles, coins, and a distinctive full-face helmet of a style that had never been seen in Britain before. Anglo-Saxons were Germanic peoples that came to Britain after the fall of the Roman Empire around the 5th century AD. They were settlers that came from Germany and southern Scandinavia who established the Kingdom of England and contributed many words to our modern English language. Scholars were very excited that this Sutton Hoo ship burial is very similar to the Old English epic poem Beowulf, where a character is laid to rest in a boat surrounded by treasures. Given that this chamber's adornments were extremely valuable, it would make sense that it was meant for some powerful figure within East Anglia, the Anglo-Saxon land where Sutton Hoo was found. Perhaps it was even fit for a king. While we are not sure who was buried at Sutton Hoo, the main theory is that it was Raedwald, king of East Anglia. Raedwald was one of the first Anglo kings to convert to Christianity, and the ship burial dates back to the early 7th century, around the same time that he died. Those relics found within the ship have given us a much deeper understanding of Anglo-Saxon culture. Their art, termed insular art, is emblematic of the time period, but perhaps the most dramatic object is the beautiful iron helmet to get a feel for the era. The gold fittings clearly came from an experienced goldsmith. Regardless, the treasures in Sutton Hoo show that the stories of the Saxons, which hold an aura of great bravery and opulence, were not the stuff of epic poetry alone. You can visit many of the objects at the British Museum. Number 9. Chariot and Two Horses. In 2013, some archaeologists hit the jackpot in Bulgaria when they discovered the remains of a complete chariot and two horses standing, practically frozen in time, ready to take the deceased to the underworld. They appear to have been buried upright in a Thracian tomb in Svestari, and while there have been similar finds, this was unlike any other carriage find in Bulgaria dating back to the Thracians. Dated back 2,500 years ago, it likely belonged to nobility. The Thracians were an Indo-European tribe that populated Central and Southeastern Europe, establishing a kingdom in the 5th century. Sadly, the horses appear to have been sacrificed after pulling the chariot into the tomb. Experts realized the horses were even still wearing their harness. A dog was also found chained to the chariot, which was a surprising discovery given the plundering of surrounding tombs. Archaeologists were surprised they found anything of value since looters had already been there. Ancient mounds in Bulgaria are often looted by treasure hunters trying to find gold. And now for a geological wonder, but first I want to say a big thank you to Deep Sea Goblin for supporting this channel, and to John Michael. Thanks guys, and congratulations on becoming a teacher. Best of luck to John. Number 8. GreaterAdria. Consider the following. Have you ever visited someplace without knowing it? Maybe you were sleeping in the car during a long drive and missed it. But based on recent geological discoveries, it appears that every year, thousands of tourists may have been vacationing on a long-lost continent. Geologists are calling this continent GreaterAdria, and it is roughly the size of Greenland. How did we miss it for so long? Well, it appears that GreaterAdria split from Africa about 240 million years ago. In between then and our evolution as humans, the movement of tectonic plates pushed it into Earth's mantle below Europe. Scientists actually knew that another continent existed in the region, but finally, after 10 years of study, they found it. Scientists pieced together its location through geological clues in the mountainous regions of southern Europe, which melded with the continent over the years. Forget Atlantis lead author Douwe van Hinsberg of Utrecht University wrote in a blog post announcing the findings. Without realizing it, Vast numbers of tourists spend their holiday each year on the lost continent of GreaterAdria. Earth's mantle has encircled most of GreaterAdria, but you might actually have seen it before. A small sliver of it goes from Turin in northern Italy to the bottom of Italy's heel, a place already called Adria. As if that weren't crazy enough, GreaterAdria is not the first lost continent to be found. In 2017, researchers discovered the fragments of an ancient supercontinent beneath Mauritius. Number 7. Knockin CAG. This is a site 1.5 billion years in the making. Located in Scotland, the Knockin CAG is a national nature reserve where billions of years of geological history come alive. There were many geological firsts in Scotland, but the Knockin is perhaps the most visually striking and even controversial. The rocks caved on top of and folded around one another, shaping the mountains into what they are today. They look a little desolate, but they are without a doubt unmistakable. On the low cliffs of Knockin CAG, there are rocks that are responsible for a great amount of geological controversy. Referred to as the Moyne Thrust, this area on the crag was created when two continents collided millions of years ago. The young rocks, or young by geological standards at least, they're around 500 million years old, collided with the old rocks, over 1.5 billion years old, thrusting the landscape about. Fittingly, geologists now refer to this kind of process of rock formation as thrust tectonics. Because of its history and all the time it took to be formed the way it is, this is one of the most amazing places to visit. It's like if you could visit the memories of the past Earth, and if you are ever in the area, be sure to check out the Knockin CAG. You won't find geology like this every day. Number 6. Prehistoric teeth. This might make you want to take a trip to the dentist. Recently in Eppelsheim, Germany, archaeologists uncovered 2 teeth, but they were around 9.7 million years old. While not human teeth, they look a lot like Lucy's teeth, the famous Australopithecus afarensis, from which scientists believe humans descended from. Interestingly, these teeth are 4 million years older even than Lucy. Eppelsheim is famous for its primate fossils, and National Geographic reports that discoveries here in the 1820s helped kickstart the fields of paleontology and paleoanthropology, but many of these fossils were lost during World War II. Some people have claimed that this discovery indicates that mankind might have originated in Europe rather than Africa, but this is not the case. It is much more likely that the teeth are from a very distant human relative, not quite a close relative like Lucy. They could even come from animals way farther away in biological space. These caramel-colored fossil teeth belong to a primate that lived between 9 and 10 million years ago. Study leader Herbert Lutz, the deputy museum director at the Mainz Natural History Museum, says that he and his colleagues have been dumbfounded by the teeth for the last year. They want to be careful not to speculate, and this discovery does not force us to re-examine the theory that humans originated from Africa. It most likely belonged to a Pliopithecus, a primitive branch of primates that lived roughly 7 to 17 million years ago. Number 5. Pulpit Rock. If you're into hiking, then this next discovery is sure to interest you. Norway is pretty cold, but it was definitely a lot colder during the Ice Age. During that era, the glaciers formed the huge fjords into the Norwegian countryside. Glaciers would touch cliffs, and when more water froze into the cliff's cracks, large mounds of earth would break away and flow out later when the glaciers melted. That is what happened at Pulpit Rock, whose steep drop is rooted in this glacial process. You can go see Pulpit Rock for yourself, and it is a super popular tourist attraction. Some people even base jump off the side of the cliff. One word of warning, however, there is actually still a big crack in its granite, one of the consequences of these glacial effects. In fact, this means that Pulpit Rock will one day fall away just like the rest of the surrounding Earth did thousands of years ago. But don't worry, it won't happen for a long time. Or at least, hopefully not while you're jumping off of it. I'm just kidding. Geologists have determined that it is safe to visit and hike the rock, so go enjoy it while you can. Number 4. Ness of Broar. The Orkney Islands are well hidden off the coast of Scotland. In 2012, archaeologists announced that they were home to an ancient settlement dating back to approximately 3,200 BC. The Ness of Broar, as archaeologists call this settlement, is home to a wealth of history. Its walls are perhaps the oldest painted walls of Europe, and its local stone crafts date well before Stonehenge. Amazingly, the Ness is an archaeological gift that keeps on giving. Researchers up to this point have found pottery, the cremated remains of animals, tools made from stone, and the remnants of a giant stone wall that is thought to have separated the Ness from the rest of the world. Given the sheer amount of stuff that archaeologists have uncovered, they think that the Ness must have been quite an important place for Neolithic people, holding both pragmatic and ceremonial significance for those who crossed its path. And furthermore, they think that the Ness was well respected beyond its borders. For one intriguing example, researchers recently discovered an incense cup in the remains. While it appears to be a small ceramic cup at first glance, what's interesting is that the only incense cups like this found in the UK all originate from Stonehenge. Could there have been a deeper connection between the two ceremonial areas? Did people travel or trade between them? More research is needed, but the concept is certainly evocative. Number 3. Kosis. In the early 20th century, Sir Arthur Evans discovered the ancient ruins of Kosis, and the site of its unearthing has become one of the most intensively examined archaeological sites in the world. Given that some say that it is Europe's oldest city, we have a lot to learn from its ruins. Kosis was home to the Minoans, who were an advanced Bronze-era civilization. The name Minoans comes from Sir Arthur Evans, who believed that he had found the palace of King Minos, a mythical king who constructed the giant labyrinth near the palace of Kosis to keep the Minotaur. Their cultural influence expanded over Crete to the old kingdoms of Egypt, developing writing, arts, and architecture wherever they went. The Minoans are considered Europe's first great Bronze Age society and one of the oldest civilizations in Europe. They lived on the island of Crete in the eastern Mediterranean Sea and dominated the seas, flourishing between 2000 and 1500 BC. Their deities were mainly female figures, and new archaeological evidence suggests they may have been a matriarchal society. Minoan society had a profound influence on the Mycenaean culture of Greece and also contributed to the development of modern Western European civilization. Some believe that this is where the myth of Atlantis came from. The culture was noted for its writing systems, extensive trade, cities, and labyrinth-like palaces. Up until 2016, most thought that Kosis and its people crumbled about 1200 BC because of volcanic eruptions and pirate invasions. But then, researchers discovered that Kosis was rebuilt in the 11th century BC, and in fact, even grew bigger. Because of this, there is a newly revived interest in the islands and what caused the end of the Minoans. Number 2. Nukagur. This is a tongue twister, much like many things you might find in Iceland. But if you're a thrill seeker, then this archaeological hotspot may just be the place for you. Discovered in 1974 by Arne B. Stephenson, Nukagur is a volcano located near Reykjavik. But don't worry about melting in its interior, it has been inactive for the past 4,000 years. The name literally translates to Three Peaks Crater, which are the three landmarks that help identify the volcano from the outside. In fact, you can descend into one of these craters and take a tour. The crater is ginormous and could hold the Statue of Liberty inside of it. The coolest aspect of this volcano is that you can visit its heart. The magma chamber is the spot in a volcano where liquid rock squeezes through the surface and erupts. But Nukagur's magma chamber no longer has magma. It might have hardened into the walls or went back inside the earth. No one is sure, but it definitely makes for an exhilarating experience. Number 1. Mega Stonehenge. I know you've heard of Stonehenge, and scientists now know that the Stonehenge area is much bigger than that one pile of rocks. In fact, about 2 miles away from the original, there is a space that was home to burial grounds, places of worship, and a mound of stones even bigger, about 5 times bigger in fact, than the one that tourists travel from around the world to see. Known as the Durrington Walls, archaeologists were hoping to find proof of large stone monoliths. Sadly, the stones of Mega Stonehenge, or Superhenge, are not there any longer. Instead, when archaeologists excavated the area, they found big pits that were once home to large posts of timber. The Megahenge was made from wood, not stone. No one knows why these Stone Age peoples removed the timber posts from their ditches they constructed for them, and they did it in a hurry, shortly after it was completed. It is unclear whether or not the Mega Stonehenge area was connected in any way to the Stonehenge that we all know and love, but given their proximity, some sort of connection is probable. All of this mega building came about during the same period of time, during religious tumult in Britain. Scientists believe the arrival of a new people called the Beaker culture disrupted people in the area. Given that archaeologists are still in the process of excavating the site, hopefully in the coming years, some of these mysteries will be solved. Thanks for watching! Which one of these places would you like to visit in person? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up so I know to make more videos like these. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!